heroes as a loneliness that is almost impossible to explain because technically you are not alone. Someone is in the room, someone is in the bed, someone may still text you, eat dinner with you, ask if you paid the bill, send you a video, sit beside you on the couch. And still, something in you feels like you are standing outside a locked house, looking through the window at the life you were supposed to be inside. That is the strange pain of feeling alone next to someone you love. It is not always dramatic. It is not always abusive. It is not always a relationship where people are screaming, cheating, threatening, or obviously cruel. Sometimes it is quieter than that. Sometimes the relationship looks normal from the outside, but inside it you have stopped asking for affection because you already know how it ends. As or if you stopped bringing up problems because the conversation turns into a dead end. You have stopped expecting warmth because expectation itself has started to feel embarrassing. In this video, I want to talk about that kind of loneliness, not the kind where you are single and wish you had someone, the kind where you have someone and still feel like there is nobody to reach. By the end, you will understand why emotional distance can hurt so much, why your body may start protecting you by needing less, and how to tell the difference between a relationship that is simply calm and a relationship that is actually connected. Because one of the most painful traps in adult love is convincing yourself that if no one is doing anything obviously wrong, then nothing is really wrong. But emotional absence can still leave a mark. The first thing to understand is that emotional loneliness usually does not start as loneliness. It starts as hope. At first you do try. You ask for more time together. You say, "Can we talk tonight?" You reach for their hand in the car. You make a joke and look over to see if they caught it. You send the long message because you still believe the right words might unlock the right response. You are not detached yet. You are still making bids for connection. A bid can be tiny. It can be a question, a look, a touch, a story, a complaint, a soft attempt to be seen. Listen to what happened today. I missed you. Can you put your phone down for a minute? That hurt me. Do you still want me? When the relationship is alive, those bids do not have to be handled perfectly. Nobody responds well every single time. People get tired. People miss cues. People are distracted. But in a connected relationship, there is repair. There is some sign that your inner world matters. Maybe they do not understand immediately, but they turn towards you eventually. They ask another question. They soften. They try again. They make space. Emotional loneliness forms when that turning toward becomes rare enough that you begin to predict disappointment before it happens. This is where people get confused, because the relationship may still have function. You may still share chores, sleep in the same bed, and talk about errands, money, schedules, or family events. The relationship may still have logistics, but logistics are not intimacy. Two people can coordinate a life and still not feel emotionally held inside it. That distinction matters. Because many people who feel lonely in relationships start gaslighting themselves with evidence that the relationship exists. They are not a bad person. They go to work. They are not cheating. They say they love me. Other people have it worse. Maybe I am asking for too much. And sometimes the person really is not a bad person. That is what makes it harder. If someone is obviously cruel, your pain has a clearer villain. But if someone is decent, tired, avoidant, distracted, emotionally limited, or simply not meeting you, you may feel guilty for naming the absence. En you fan no old else, en mu wade else, en du isablit half is happening. The tid buquar nadu is respond to danger. The delay wo axo responds to deprivation. An emotional deprivation has its own shape. It is the ache of having nowhere for your feelings to land. It is the tension of editing yourself before you speak. It is the small humiliation of wanting to be touched by someone who does not seem to notice you are reaching. It is lying beside someone and feeling your chest tighten because they are close enough to touch, but not close enough to reach. The second thing that happens is that you start shrinking the request. This is one of the hidden mechanisms of lonely relationships. Most people do not stop wanting connection all at once. They negotiate themselves down. At first you want warmth. Then you tell yourself you should be grateful for politeness. At first you want curiosity. Then you settle for not being criticized. At first you want affection. Then you settle for proximity. At first you want a partner who asks how you are and actually stays for the answer. Then you start saying, I am fine, because the real answer would take too much energy to defend. This is not maturity. This is not being low maintenance. This is not becoming more peaceful. Sometimes it is your nervous system learning that desire is expensive. Every time you ask and nothing changes, your body records the cost. The cost of hoping, the cost of explaining, the cost of watching their face go blank, the cost of being told you are too sensitive, the cost of having a vulnerable moment turn into a debate about your tone. Eventually, your system tries to protect you. It says, do not reach so far, do not need so much, do not make this person responsible for anything tender, just keep things simple, so you become easier to be with, but not because you are more secure, because you are less visible. This is why emotional loneliness can look like calm from the outside. There may be fewer arguments, there may be less conflict, there may be a strange relief in not trying anymore. But if the calm comes from giving up, it is not safety, it is resignation. Real peace feels open, resignation feels flat. Real peace lets you breathe, resignation teaches you not to expect air. And if you grew up with emotional neglect, resignation may feel familiar enough that you mistake it for normal. That is the third layer. Adult emotional loneliness often lands so deeply because it touches an older place. If, as a child, your feelings were ignored, minimized, mocked, rushed, or treated like a problem, you may have learned a quiet rule: my needs are not worth interrupting anyone for. So in adult relationships, when someone is emotionally unavailable, it does not feel like one isolated disappointment. It can feel like proof that you are too much, proof that you should not have asked, proof that love means managing yourself alone, proof that closeness is something other people get more naturally than you do. This is why we stay too long in an emotionally empty relationship. Not because you are weak, because the emptiness matches a room you already know. If you were trained to live on crumbs, crumbs may not immediately look like starvation. You may even be proud of how little you need. You may tell yourself, I do not want to be needy. But there is a difference between neediness and having needs. Neediness is what happens when a real need has been shamed, starved, and forced to come out sideways. Wanting to be remembered is not controlling. Wanting your partner to notice when you are quiet is not dramatic. Wanting warmth, repair, touch, curiosity, and emotional presence is not a luxury request. Those are part of what makes a relationship a relationship. The fourth thing to understand is that emotional absence changes the way you read yourself. At first you may think, I feel lonely because they are distant. But after enough time, the story can flip. You start thinking, maybe I feel lonely because I am impossible to satisfy. This is one of the quietest damages of chronic emotional distance. It makes you suspicious of your own hunger. You start asking, am I too sensitive? Am I expecting a movie version of love? Is this just what long-term relationships become? Do I want too much talking? Do I need too much reassurance? Am I ruining the peace by naming what is missing? These are not always bad questions. Self-reflection matters, but there is a point where self-reflection becomes self-erasure. If every path leads back to you being the problem, you are no longer reflecting. You are protecting the relationship from your own truth. As here is a deliver you to, as no only ask, are my needs reasonable? Ask, what happens when I bring a reasonable need here? That question gives you better information. Because the health of a relationship is not measured by whether you never feel disappointed. It is measured by what happens after disappointment enters the room. Can this person be curious without getting defensive? Can they hear pain without turning it into a trial? Can they offer repair without acting like repair is humiliation? Can they care about the impact of their absence, even if they did not intend to hurt you? Can the relationship stretch enough to include your real experience? If the answer is sometimes yes, there may be something to work with. If the answer is almost always no, then the loneliness is not just a feeling, it is feedback. And feedback is not betrayal, it is information your body has been collecting while your mind was trying to be fair. The fifth piece is the hardest one. You cannot heal emotional loneliness by becoming even better at needing nothing. Many people try. They get busier, they pour more into work, they become the fun one, the calm one, the undemanding one. They stop initiating affection so rejection cannot find them. They keep the relationship smooth by removing all the parts of themselves that might create friction. But the cost is that the relationship becomes easier because you are less present inside it, and eventually you may not even know what you want anymore. You only know what you are allowed to want. So what do? Not in a perfect social media caption way, in a real-life way. Start by telling the truth without turning it into a courtroom. There is a difference between an accusation and a clear emotional statement. You never care about me may be what the pain wants to say, but the deeper truth might be, I have been feeling lonely with you, and I am scared because I have started asking for less instead of feeling closer. That sentence is vulnerable because it names the pattern, not just the crime. It gives the other person a chance to meet you. And then you watch, not just what they promise, what they do with the information. Do they get curious? Do they slow down? Do they make room? Do they follow up in a week, not just apologize in the moment? Do they treat your loneliness as something happening to both of you, or as an inconvenience you brought to them? That last question matters, because you cannot build intimacy alone. You can build self-trust alone. You can build language alone. You can build the courage to ask alone. You can learn to regulate your body alone, but a relationship requires response. If you are the only person carrying the emotional reality of the relationship, then you are not in intimacy, you are in emotional management. And emotional management can look very loyal from the outside. Inside, it is exhausting. Here is the payoff. Feeling alone next to someone you love does not automatically mean the relationship has to end, but it does mean something has to become honest. The loneliness needs a voice. The pattern needs a name. The other person needs a real invitation to respond. And you need to stop treating your need for closeness like evidence against you. And you are singest imrodi shook and onucher emotionally met. And you are so in war luishum iprukam mors and chistics, and berust and yeast, and yesher iprefura. And if that presence cannot be offered, you deserve to know that clearly, instead of slowly adapting to its absence until you forget you were allowed to want it. If this helped you name something you have been living with quietly, subscribe to Katalyst Mind. This channel is for people who are done calling emotional survival their personality. And if you watch another video after this, choose the one about why closeness can make you want to run. Because sometimes the person disappearing is your partner, and sometimes the person disappearing is you.